Dear listener, today we embark on a journey through the classical elements, starting with earth, then water, and finally air. Each element holds unique significance in nature's balance, and together they form the foundation of all things. Progressively, we will be shedding much-needed light on the hermetic principles upon which are founded the great alchemical endeavor. Let us begin. From the very beginning, nature employed only two simple principles from which everything that exists was formed, namely passive prime matter and the luminous agent that gave it form. The elements emerged from their action as secondary principles, from the mixture of which a secondary matter was formed, subject to the vicissitudes of generation and corruption. It is difficult to fathom that the elements are absolutely simple and distinct from one another. The human mind cannot even know them. Those that are commonly called elements are not truly simple and homogeneous. They are so mixed and united that they are inseparable. The tangible bodies of earth, water, and air, which are really distinct in their spheres, are not the primary and simple elements that nature employs in its various generations. They are rather merely the matrix of the others. The simple elements are imperceptible and insensible until their union constitutes a dense matter that we call a body, to which the coarse elements join as integral parts. The elements that constitute our globe are too raw, impure, and indigestible to form a perfect generation. Moreover, chemists and physicists improperly attribute to them the properties of the true primary elements. The former are like the soul of the mixtures, while the latter are merely their bodies. According to alchemical literature, art is ignorant of the first, and it would work in vain to reduce the mixtures to them. This is the work of nature alone. On these principles, the ancient philosophers distinguished the elements into only three, and imagined the universe governed by three brothers, children of Saturn, whom they claimed were the sons of heaven and earth. The Egyptians, from whom the ancient Greek philosophers drew their philosophy, regarded Vulcan as the father of Saturn, according to Diodorus of Sicily. This is undoubtedly the reason they did not include fire among the elements. But as they assumed that the fire of nature, the principle of elemental fire, had its source in the sky, they granted its dominion to Jupiter, and as a scepter and distinctive mark, they armed him with a three-pronged lightning bolt and associated his sister Juno as the ruler of the air. Neptune was designated over the sea and Pluto over the underworld. The poets adopted these ideas from the philosophers who, having a perfect knowledge of nature, deemed it appropriate to distinguish it in only three, believing that the accidents distinguishing the lower region of air from the upper did not provide a sufficient reason for making a real distinction. They noted only a difference between dry and wet, hot and cold, married together, which led them to imagine the two sexes within the same element. Each of the three brothers had a three-pronged scepter as a mark of his dominion, suggesting that each element, as we see it, is a composite of the three. They were truly brothers, having emerged from the same principle, sons of heaven and earth. That is, animated prime matter from which everything was made. Pluto is called the god of wealth and the master of the underworld because the earth is the source of riches, and nothing troubles humans more than the thirst for wealth and ambition. The Hermetic philosophers, as true disciples and imitators of nature, made a double application of these principles, seeing in the processes and progress of the great work the operations of nature. As in a mirror, they no longer distinguished themselves from one another and explained them in the same way. They then compared everything that happens in the work to the successive progress of the creation of the universe. By a certain analogy, they observed, The analysis of mixtures gives us only the dry and the wet, from which we must conclude that there are only two sensible elements in the composition of bodies, namely, earth and water. But the same experience shows us that the other two are hidden within. Air is too subtle to strike our eyes. Hearing and touch are the only senses that demonstrate its existence to us. As for the fire of nature, it is impossible for art to manifest it in any other way than through its demonstrative effects. Dear listener, we will now explore earth as the first of the three elements in today's talk. Earth is cold by nature because it partakes more of the prime matter, opaque and dark. This coldness makes it the heaviest body as well as the densest, and this density renders it less penetrable to light, which is the principle of heat. It was created amid waters, with which it is always mixed, and the Creator seems to have made its surface dry only to make it suitable for the habitation of plants and animals. The Creator made the earth sponge-like, so that air, water, and fire would have freer access to it, and that the internal fire, which was infused into it by the Spirit of God before the formation of the sun, could push from the center to the surface through its pores the virtues of the elements and exhale those humid vapors that corrupt the seeds of things through a slight putrefaction, preparing them for generation. These seeds, thus disposed, then receive the heavenly and vivifying heat, even attracting it through a magnetic love. The germ develops, and the seed produces its fruit. The heat within the earth is solely conducive to corruption. Its humidity weakens it and cannot produce anything unless aided by the pure and unmixed heavenly heat that leads to generation by stimulating the action of the internal fire, developing it, dilating it, and drawing it, so to speak, from the center of the seeds, where it is as if numbed and hidden. These two heats, by their homogeneity, work together for the generation and preservation of mixtures. All cold is contrary to generation. When a matter is of this nature, it becomes passive and is only suitable to the extent that it is aided and corrected by external assistance. The author of nature, wanting the earth to be the matrix of mixtures, continuously warms it by the heat of the celestial and central fires, and joins it with the humid nature of water, so that, aided by the two principles of generation, the hot and the humid, it is not sterile, and becomes the vessel in which all generations take place. For this reason, it is said that the earth contains the other elements. It can be divided into pure earth and impure earth. The former is the basis of all mixtures and produces everything through the mixture of water and the action of fire. The latter is like the garment of the former. It is an integral part of the composition of individuals. The pure earth is animated by a fire that vivifies the mixtures and preserves them in their manner of being, as long as the cold of the impure earth does not dominate it, or as long as it is not too excited and tyrannized by artificial and elemental fire, its fratricide. What is visible in the earth is fixed, and what is invisible is volatile. We now turn our attention to water, the second of the three elements in today's exploration. Water has a density that lies between that of air and that of earth. It is the menstruum of nature and the vehicle of seeds. It is a volatile body that seems to flee the touch of fire and evaporates into vapor at even the lightest heat. It is capable of taking all forms and is more changeable than Proteus. Water is a mercury that sometimes takes on the nature of a terra aqueous body, and, at other times, that of an aqua-aerial body, attracting and seeking the virtues of both the upper and lower things. Through this means, It becomes the messenger of the gods and their mediator. It is through it that the commerce between heaven and earth is maintained. Since water is of a nature closer to that of the prime matter of the world, it easily becomes its image. The chaos from which everything emerged was like a vapor or a humid substance, resembling subtle smoke. The light having rarefied it, the heavens were formed from the most refined portion, air from that which was slightly less refined, elemental water from that which was a little coarser, and earth from the densest. Thus, water, partaking of the nature of air and earth, finds itself placed in the middle. Lighter than the earth and less light than air, it is always mixed with both. At the slightest rarefaction, it seems to abandon the earth to take on the nature of air. If it is condensed by the slightest cold, it leaves the air and reunites with the earth. The nature of water is rather humid than cold, because it is rarer and more open to light than the earth. Water has retained the humidity of the prime matter and chaos. The earth has retained the coldness. Dryness is an effect of cold as well as of heat, and humidity is the primary subject on which hot and cold act. When the heat is vigorous, it condenses and dries the humid. We see this in snow, ice, and hail. Hence comes the falling of leaves in autumn. If the cold increases, winter follows. The humidity coagulates in plants. The pores tighten. The stem becomes weak for lack of nourishment, and they finally dry up. If winter is severe, it brings dryness even into the roots. It attacks the vital humidity, and the plants perish. How can one say after this that cold is a quality of water, since it is its enemy, and nature does not allow one element to act upon itself? It seems more correct to say that cold has burned the plants. Both cold and heat burn equally, but in different ways. Heat by dilating and cold by tightening the parts of the mixture. What water presents to us as visible is volatile. Its interior is fixed. The air tempers its humidity. What the air receives from fire, it communicates to water, that in turn to the earth. This element can be divided into three parts: the pure, the purer, and the very pure. From the latter the heavens were made, from the purer air was generated, and the simply pure remains in its sphere. It is ordinary water which forms but one globe with the earth. These two elements united are everything because they contain the other two. From their union arises a slime, which nature uses to form all bodies. This slime is the proximate matter of all generations. It is a sort of chaos where the elements are as if confused. The first beings were formed from slime, just as were all the generations that followed. From sperm and menstruum, a slime is formed, and from this slime, an animal. In the production of plants, the seeds putrefy and change into slime before germinating. It then solidifies and strengthens into a plant body. In the generation of metals, sulfur and mercury resolve into a viscous water, which is a true slime just as well. The decoction coagulates this water, fixing it more or less, and minerals and metals result. In the philosophical work, one first forms a slime from two substances or principles after having well purified them. As the four elements are present, fire preserves the earth from submersion and complete dissolution. Air maintains the fire. Water conserves the earth against the violent attacks of the latter, and acting thus upon one another in concert, a harmonious whole results, composing the philosopher's stone and the microcosm. Finally, dear listener, we arrive at air, the last of the three elements in today's discussion. Air is light and not visible, but it contains a matter that takes on a corporeal form and becomes fixed. It is of a middle nature between what is above and what is below it. That is why it easily adopts the qualities of its neighbors. From this come the changes we experience in the lower region, both from cold and from heat. Air is the receptacle of the seeds of everything, the screen and sieve of nature, through which the virtues and influences of other bodies are transmitted to us. It penetrates everything. It is a very subtle smoke, the proper subject of light and darkness, of day and night, a body always full, diaphanous, and the most susceptible to foreign qualities, as well as the easiest to abandon them. Philosophers call it spirit when they discuss the great work. It contains the vital spirits of all bodies. It is the nourishment of fire, of plants, and of animals, which die when it is withheld from them. Nothing would be born in the world without its penetrating and altering force, and nothing can resist its rarefaction. The upper region of air is pure without being fiery, as has long been taught in schools, based on the opinion of some ancients. Its purity is not sullied by any of the vapors that rise from below. The middle region receives the most subtle, sulphurous exhalations, freed from the coarse vapors. They wander there, and occasionally ignite due to their movements and the various shocks they undergo among themselves. In the lower region, the vapors of the earth rise and accumulate. They condense there due to the cold and fall back down under their own weight. Nature thus rectifies and purifies the water to make it suitable for its generations. That is why waters are distinguished as superior and inferior. The latter are adjacent to the earth, supported by it as their base, and form but one globe with it. The superior waters occupy the lower region of air, where they have risen in the form of vapors and clouds, wandering at the whim of the winds. The air is filled with them at all times, but they are only partially visible to us when they condense into clouds. This is a consequence of creation. God is said to have separated the waters of the firmament from those that were below. It should not be surprising that these humid masses flying above our heads are like travelers who go to gather the riches of all lands and return to reward their homeland. In conclusion, dear listener, fire deserves special attention and will be reserved for its own lecture. Thank you for joining me today in exploring earth, water, and air. Until next time, stay curious and take good care.